Hello, brothers and sisters. Blessed are the suffering. We're looking at Matthew 5, the Beatitudes. Blessed are the suffering. Who even thinks that way? Blessed are the suffering. Blessed are those. Let's look at Luke 6:22 and Luke 6:23. Blessed are you when people hate you, when they exclude you and insult you, and reject you as evil, reject your name as evil because of the Son of Man. So why do they hate you? They hate you because of the Son of Man. But why else do they hate you? Who else? Who is hated? Let's say in America. Who is hated in America? Well, those who the hated ones are the ones who, let's say, watched The Sound of Freedom and agreed with the cause. Evidently, those are the hated ones. And what does that say about the ones who are the haters? What does that suggest? Blessed, you can see what blessed are the suffering. Blessed are you when people hate you. Blessed, that's a blessing. If you're hated by those, you're on the right side there. So that's a blessing. Rejoice in that day, leap for joy. This is Luke 6:23. Rejoice in that day, because great is your reward in heaven. Great is your reward in heaven. How short-sighted we can be, or how we can cling to a long-term vision and walk by the Spirit rather than the flesh. For that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. Rejoice and leap for joy, because great is your reward in heaven. And why? For that is how their ancestors treated the prophets. They were not treated well. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. By the way, I'm not a theologian here. I'm doing my best. Here. But if you want a first-class theologian, there's plenty of them out there. I'm just a guy who's been around for a while and studied my Bible for a while and sharing my thoughts on it, my understanding. 2 Corinthians 12, 9 and 10. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, this is, of course, Paul writing to the Corinthians. And he said, my grace is sufficient, because Paul's suffering, right? He's got the thorn in the flesh. He's suffering. He's praying for healing, but he's not getting it. Finally, he gets a word back from God. My grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Not exactly what Paul wanted to hear. He wanted healing, right? But then he understood it differently, though. He got the message in the proper context. Therefore, his response is, therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities. So Paul got the message as it was intended. He got the message as it was intended. Rejoice in that day of being hated, that day of suffering. Rejoice in that day and leap for joy. Paul says, I will boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. How does that work? He's suffering and he's being told, you're not going to be healed. And he says, I'm going to most gladly, I will boast in my infirmities, therefore that Christ will rest upon me, because he sees that that's where the real reward is. Therefore, I take pleasure in my infirmities, in reproaches and needs and persecutions and distresses. Who takes pleasure in infirmities, reproaches, needs, and persecutions and distresses for Christ's sake? Even if it is for Christ's sake. It says, I take pleasure in infirmities. Now that's a stretch, is it not? But he follows up with this. For when I am weak, then I am strong. So there's a grace there, a hidden blessing, a grace. So it's not about just the weakness, because within that weakness there's strength. And that's what Paul wants. That's why That's why we're told, rejoice in that day and leap for joy. That's from Jesus. Because great is your reward in heaven. 1 Thessalonians 5:16, rejoice always, pray without ceasing. In everything give thanks. In everything give thanks. The good, the bad, the ugly, the suffering, the hatred, when we're persecuted. In everything give thanks. Give thanks for this is the will of God. Is blessing us. He's blessing us with persecutions and sufferings. It does say, after all, that God disciplines the sons that he loves. And he does say, Paul does write in Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good with those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. All things work together for good. The good, the bad, the ugly, the painful, the persecutions, the suffering. It all works together for good. For who? For those who love God, to those who are called according to his purpose, and of course to those who endure to the end. So do not sorrow, for the Lord, for the joy of the Lord is your strength. God bless. God bless. Thank you for watching.